You are listening to Tales from the Vale, hosted by local pizza proprietor Tony Mitchell
and Lee Gilligan, peripatetic wine industry veteran. A podcast where we have conversations with wine industry personalities,
passionate foodies,
business identities,
and community leaders who live, work and play in and around McLaren Vale
and the Fleurieu Peninsula.
Tales from the Vale.
Today, on Tales from the Vale, for the first time we interview a couple who arrived here to take over their small family-owned winery and have since turned it into a McLaren Vale cult success. One half of this duo became McLaren Vale's first Master of Wine. Please welcome Drew and Raegan Noon.
We're back with the first duo. We've never interviewed two people at once or had a conversation with two people at once. So
could be the last time.
It's all new. It's all new and new microphone.
Could well be.
It's a big week in Tales of the Vale with our flash new microphone stands, isn't it, Lee?
It is. We've invested very heavily in this whole program.
Yeah, it's what we do with all those streams, all the big dollars that come in. We just put it back into mic stands and
that's it.
Go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Take it away, mate.
So, you actually moved here in 1967. Drew.
67, yeah. I was only a young fella then, born in 1960, so just at school. And
where'd you go to school?
Well, first year was at Blackwood,
Oh.
primary, I guess. Can't tell you. I was too young. But we lived in Blackwood. I remember the school, but I don't remember the name.
And then Wollonga?
And then Wollonga, yeah, right through. So Wollonga Primary and then Wollonga High. Yep.
So did you go to school with any other winemakers
Joe,
in this
yes.
district? Joe, Fabio,
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
your memory's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what were you doing here?
And others, Lee, in case
Yeah,
anyone's
I know. What were you doing here? Why did you come here?
Well, not my decision, obviously, at that age. So my dad was a language teacher in the city. He was teaching French, mostly French and some English, and was involved in a car accident on the way to work. He wasn't driving. Hit his head on the metal dash of the Holden because they didn't have seatbelts then. So it wasn't a big crash, but stopped sharp, hit the back of someone, I believe. His head hit the dash, and he seemed okay, concussed, but okay at the time. But following that, started having later, took some years, but started having epilepsy episodes. So would sort of have some sort of epileptic fit. Nothing major, but would involve losing consciousness and sort of occasionally falling. Well, that wasn't very convenient in classrooms. That scared the kids a lot. It used to scare us a bit. And but anyway, so slowly the realisation that he needed to get out of teaching, which I'm one of 5 kids, so family of 7 by then, and Dad was the only earner at the time. So that's quite a scary.
It would have been quite daunting, absolutely, for anyone.
At the time would have been really so because they didn't have any other obvious, or they had to reinvent how they were going to make a living, and where. Anyway, and the family had owned a little fibro shack beach house at Aldinga Beach for some time before that, and used to come down here a bit, and actually bought a block that had some almonds on it at sort of Selleck's Beach Way, between Selleck's Beach and Wollonga. So sort of had some connections with the area, and Dad had grown up in wine regions in Clare and Adelaide Hills and so on, and so felt familiar with agriculture and wine. And anyway, when they were looking for some other way to make a living, they thought, well,
how's that?
Become a farmer.
Yeah,
that would have
proper
been
sea change.
That would have been quite early days in McLaren Vale.
Yeah, they were. Yep. And Dad was struck straight away. I remember we all were, because we were aware that they were welcomed so well. People like Greg Trott that were close by. Darry, a lot of the Johnsons. Basically the K's, everybody sort of, particularly when
the old school.
But this was particularly, I'm thinking, once Dad started thinking he might have a go at making his own wine, because initially we were selling, it was a mixed farm, 25-acre farm with old Grenache bush vines, but also had almonds and apricots. So in the initial period, when we weren't winemakers, we were selling the grapes, selling cut and dried apricots. I used to spend my summer cutting and drying apricots.
Wow. And that was a big thing down here back then.
Yeah, it was.
Well, probably the almonds are covered in apricot trees.
Yes.
No, I had a lot of history
Stone
in
fruit
that.
and dried fruit. We didn't have a fresh fruit market. I think we were too small and maybe it was too difficult at the time. But so we used to cut and dry the apricots and sell them dried to the fruit packers. And of course, once they're dried, they're quite long shelf life. And anyway, slowly the almond industry started struggling because of California sort of mainly, I think it was that effect is because they started with machine shakers and irrigation, a bit like the vineyards changed. And but almonds, unlike wines, just a commodity product. So the price per pound, as it was then, sort of crashed in the world market a bit because California was churning out lots of cheap almonds. And all these trees along the Salix foothills through to Wollonga were dry grown and hand knocked basically, except the Lacey's. Some of the bigger growers had machine shakers by then, and some was irrigated, but a lot was still dry grown and hand. Well, you couldn't sustain a family. So after years,
is that? I'm just wanting to step back. I'm probably getting ahead of the whole conversation.
That's fine.
Is that because the yields were so low because they were dry grown and hand knocked that if the price went down, it was so much harder to look after a family? Absolutely,
yes to all of that. So the yields would have been less than half what the irrigated blocks were. Plus, you had the hand labour instead of shaking. Olives, grapes have all done the same, really. They've invented ways that's cheaper to pick them, and almonds were probably the first. And we were, using poles. We used to go up to Kaipo Forest and cut, small, thin
swatches.
And knock, and then onto
branches, or we using
pine, and pine poles, and onto a ground sheet that you pulled up manually in a tractor, and then it didn't get any better because once at our scale, it did for a lot of people who had machines then to deal with the almonds in the husk and so on, so they're worth more. This was still to the fruit packers, but they're worth more if you dehusked them and sold them in the shell, and they're worth more again if you cracked them and could sell the kernels. But that, unless you're going to, sit with a hammer, that you need a machine to make that economic.
I was waiting for the next thing. Like we didn't have, we just at night time. Our family entertainment was,
and so
cracking nuts.
And so at our scale, of course, you couldn't afford a machine. It wasn't worth the machine. So we would, but it was worth husking them because. If they were in the husk, it was also understood that all the leaf matter and basically everything that knocked onto the ground sheet went into the bag. And so you didn't get a very good price for that. But if you husked them, you also cleaned. So then you get clean in the shell almonds. They were worth more. So, but that was done. We used to manually, a lot of them, if you pick at the right time, would fall naturally out of the husk anyway. But you'd have maybe half of them you'd have to hand husk and then sort and put them in a bag. I remember sewing up the jute bags with a needle or Dad doing it.
So what about on that? Because you mentioned, so your father, there's a career change, went into farming, but prior to that, the family did have a shack at Aldinga and a block as well that was attached to that shack, or was that another? Was this your father or his family?
No, my father and mother.
Yeah. So they purchased a farming block or a hobby farm.
Yes, it was a small. Yes, it was only almonds, and it was, I don't even remember the size.
Prior to the move.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm not sure.
So there was a genuine interest in agriculture.
In the land and in agriculture.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I guess that's what helped when the need to change.
I
thought was an obvious sort of connections.
So when did your dad start making wine?
70, that's sort of 72 if you count bathtubs,
Right.
Well, probably 71, 72 in there. I can remember demijohns and bathtubs, and then was 76 when he opened the cellar door and started selling to the public.
Right.
That's when we normally say it was founded.
Was there grapes on this block, on that Salix block that we're talking about?
No.
Or was there another property bought in that interim when you guys moved with the house? And
no, neither. No, there were just the vineyard on the block that we bought. Yeah, so there was no.
Excuse my ignorance. Is that where you're at now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Yes. So, but initially, we moved there in 67 to that block with there was 10 acres of Grenache bush vines, and initially they were being sold for about 3 or 4 years until Dad's looking, going, well, the almonds are going to crap. The prices, like, we're not going to feed the family on almonds and on selling almonds, and grapes was okay. The price was up. We had Grenache, which, believe it or not, I'm sure you guys are old enough, but back then that wasn't the best variety to sell either, to have like price-wise. So the selling grapes was okay.
What was?
Shiraz.
Even in the 60s?
Certainly by the 70s. Yeah, by the red wine boom. That was and if you didn't have Shiraz, you had Cabernet.
Yeah,
and
of
if you
course.
really had to, you'd have Grenache, but there was, you poor things.
Poor man. Poor man's fruit.
Well, because in its strengths were its weakness in the sense that it was so well adapted to the area and widely grown that it wasn't valued sort of thing. And yes, people, when they started getting onto Shiraz, they loved the darker colour and it seemed like that was, wow, that's exotic.
Almost the opposite.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when did you decide to become a winemaker?
Well, slowly growing up with it, I guess. I didn't have a moment. I suppose I sort of did, because when you finish year 12, you always got to say, well,
What
what's
am I going
next?
to do?
And so that's when
What's
you really
next?
got to say is
Yeah.
that. And honestly, I wasn't sure then, because it's the only thing I knew.
Hmm.
And I didn't know what everybody else did or what life was like outside of small vineyard in the McLaren Vale. And I thought, well, I wonder what flying a airline pilot would be like, or what a doctor does, or a lawyer, or whatever.
With the
or-
headphones on, I can see it.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Or anything else. So I wasn't sure really. It seemed nice enough. Living on the vineyard and making wine was intriguing. Dad was clearly intrigued, and I was, too young to be drinking a lot of wine then, but I could see it was fascinating. I thought, don't know, what other people do? So I actually enrolled, as far as I recall, you had to nominate things for, I took a gap year after year 12. I wanted a break, but I nominated some things for uni, and I think I put park ranger as the first number. How you sort of list priorities, because you can't necessarily get in anywhere depending on your score. Or
Sure.
whatever. And I think I was thinking about other things, but I either and I don't remember what happened. I either changed my mind or didn't get in. And then by the time the year had gone by, I thought, nah, this is probably okay. This will do.
Oh.
Hmm.
Thankfully.
Well,
For a lot of people.
it took a long.
Where did you
took
go
time.
after you graduated?
High school or
Winemaking.
after Roseworthy, so 79 till 81, I was at Roseworthy. And again, I've been very lucky in a lot of ways in my life. And one of them was when I left Roseworthy, when I had very few sort of solid plans about what to do next. And I didn't really want to go home because it was too small. And so I was lucky because you had to organise a harvest stage in your third year, as it was then. It's now a 4-year course at Adelaide Uni, but it was 3 years then. You had to go out and do harvest, and I hadn't organised much. And Spinner,
That sounds like a very well organised crew noon that I know.
It's very surprising.
just cruising along. And anyway, and it got to the time where you really had to have something nominated, and I was lucky because Andrew Spinner, who's a long-term winemaker at Tyrrell's now in the Hunter Valley, he was at Rosewood at the time and said to me, there's jobs going, there's a job going at Tyrrell's in the Hunter. I went, wow, gee, that's okay. Because it was sort of what I wanted in a way. Yeah, completely different. And lucky because that turned out to be I couldn't imagine it, how life could have worked out better, how I could have gone to a better place, because it was at the time, it's a much different place now, but it was an old earth-floored cellar
Traditional.
with natural yeast ferments, and it was very much a challenge to my Roseworthy, my 3 years at Roseworthy, which had been teaching me all about trying to control everything.
Yeah, pure winemaking.
So it was terrific.
Mm.
And Murray Tyrrell was still alive then. We had a healthy scepticism, shall I say, for young trained winemakers, and that was
Of
good too.
course.
Because it was a very challenging environment.
You're a nincompoop.
Yes. Do I really believe this? Or
Yeah.
let me taste that wine. Wow. Maybe you don't need all this. So that was great.
Quite formidable.
Lucky.
It sounds like, yeah, absolutely.
And then from there, did you go to Victoria?
Yeah. So, I guess it was 5 years.
Leading up to the point where you met Ray.
Yeah.
Because I want Ray to say something.
Yeah, because
in a
she is
minute.
here.
Sitting ever so patiently.
I'll be quick. So 3 5-year stints away from home after Roseworthy before come back to the Vale. So 5 years at Tyrrell's, then 5 years down in Victoria, based in Bendigo with the Department of Agriculture, so a public service job.
As enologist?
Enologist, state government enologist. They go, no, it's a very grand title. I thought so at the time too. Should I apply for that? But they were struggling to find someone, and I must have been eventually, went down and did that, and that was great experience because, very briefly, the Victorian government at the time, the John Cain's government, you would remember, were looking to support the burgeoning cool climate wine industry in the south of Victoria. must be getting old because it seems like a long time ago now. But that was new, you know. They only had the Rutherglen and the Mildura area, Sunraysia and so on. And they were, and the Victorian government went, oh, this looks really, there's a lot of doctors and people putting money into the Yarra Valley. We should support this as a government. So they were looking for a winemaking person to support it. Anyway, so did that for 5 years. And then I had met, then this is where Ray comes in, because the last 5 years away, I went up to Port Macquarie in New South Wales, is an unusual place to grow grapes. And I ended up there because I'd met John Cassegrain at Tyrrell's when he was there, when I first was there in 81 doing harvest. And John was looking for a winemaker and we knew each other. And anyway, he offered me a job there and I did. So, and that's...
And then you met Ray, who was running the lab.
Well, she wasn't.
No?
No.
No, I started in the kiosk at Cassegrain Winery and worked there. And so I'd met Drew just making sandwiches and things. And then in our family, my mum was killed in a car accident and I had to get a proper job.
Right.
And then I went in the lab and met Drew.
Yeah.
Just really odd. It catches me every now and again.
Absolutely.
I'm not upset.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Oh, I understand that. Like I said, there's emotion there.
That's
Absolutely.
hard to talk about.
Creep up at you any time.
It does.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I started in the lab and I never ever thought I would be where we are now in the wine industry. It's I should have paid more attention.
So you got a kiosk in a winery or at a kiosk?
No, in a kiosk in the winery.
Yeah, right, okay.
And then when I needed to get a proper job,
Yeah, absolutely.
the boss said, because I said, I'm going to have to go because I need to get a full-time job. And he said, oh, there's a job coming up in the lab. And I said, oh, goodness, I don't have any background in science or I've not been a engineer. And he said, if my wife can do this job, anyone can do it. So I had to go. Yeah. And I got, you gave me Patrick Ireland's book. It's this book, how to do all the experiments.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
So were you guys romantic at this point? Like
No.
together? Oh,
No.
So you were friends?
They hated each other in actual fact.
You're getting a book.
No, we
You're getting
just-
like you're someone that lends a book, like a colleague's like, here you go, borrow that. Were you in the lab? Colleague, how was it working?
My office was in the lab, I guess. Yeah.
So our desks were a couple of metres away.
Yeah, okay.
But I didn't really know Drew.
Yeah,
No, we
fair
didn't
enough.
really get
No, it was
together for about
it was
a year later.
workplace meeting sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
So-
trying to
but
write
I
the
was-
script of
So-
this like Hollywood romance story.
Well,
Yeah,
but
like love blossoms in a
but
beacon.
it's-
Let's get down to the
But it's
nitty gritty.
true.
What attracted you to one another?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was her that got attracted. I think that was me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
He used to. So often I would do with my dad. We would do the shopping on a Thursday night, and I would regularly see Drew in the shopping centre. What's he doing there? And so he was following me for quite some time.
Just popping up as a
Stalker.
serial.
Yeah.
Stalker.
Yeah.
Stalking. Yeah.
Creeping.
Yeah.
What
So
town are we in at the moment?
Port Macquarie.
Port Macquarie, yeah, right.
In New
So a
South
small
Wales.
town.
Yeah.
Not hard to be caught
Running
out.
into people in the
Caught out
supermarket.
stalking.
No, you know where they're going to be.
Yeah. So I guess we became friends really for that year, and then became romantically involved. And then I decided to leave because it.
Did you enjoy the work? Like
No.
yeah, right, okay.
And I won't do it now either.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. That's amazing. But so you're in
It's
this
just very-
job. You've taken on this huge responsibility through, a terrible circumstance.
Yeah.
Stepped up the plate, got this
Yeah.
opportunity, done that.
Yeah.
And in an environment that would seem quite foreign, I think, to anyone really, that's
Yes.
walking in from a kiosk, let
Yes.
alone even a wine background.
Yes.
To go into
I
that.
liked being in the winery. I was happy to go on a Friday, was cleaning days. So you would go down with all the cellar people, happy cleaning the floors and things like that. It's just in the lab. It's a very tedious job. So it's quite repetitive. And I'm more a creative person. So I found that, it just wasn't my thing.
Absolutely wasn't your fit. Yeah.
But I liked being in the winery. Yeah, it was nice.
So this blossomed and continued.
It did. And then, so Drew's dad had been trying to retire for a long time. He was getting older and he was sort of encouraging Drew, do you want to come back? Do you want to come back? And he just really wasn't ready. So
This is after 15 years, though, from him listening, right? Of you sort of
Yeah.
learning the craft.
I was starting to get interested,
Were you sort of like the
Well-
prodigal son returning?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
It
But
just, I
there
think,
was an
seemed-
attraction to this is the 80s when there were long lunches and, but things were booming and I was
Long lunches.
learning a lot. Well, yeah.
There were long lunches.
Yeah, I know.
can tell
Well,
you.
Yeah,
just
we
a
talk about
time
that.
when, the economy, the wine was going well and I was learning and doing a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do or experienced at home. So I was growing and learning a lot. So, and even though Dad's sort of getting older and saying, I'm like, well, this is great. I don't know that I want to come home. But then slowly things
Well,
changed.
Drew's dad put
I
the
met Ray.
place on the market. So
Mm.
where we are now, he put Noons, it was Noons then, put it on the market and it had sold. They
Oh, wow.
got the deposit. It was to a group of investors who weren't in the wine industry. There was a political guy, a car sales guy. There was a number, maybe
So
5 of
everyone's
them.
like people that wouldn't even naturally have any connection to wine now
No.
are looking at that market going, oh, I want a piece of that.
Yes.
You know,
and
or I've now got a new love for it or a passion for it and I want to get involved.
Yes.
they wanted Dad to stay,
Right.
you see, to guide it and
Exactly.
continue
Someone to
winemaking
do-
for a
do
while.
it.
Do it.
Let's
So
go.
he was kind of happy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it
He
didn't
was
work out.
happy. Well, we were happy for him. But Drew would ring his dad every Sunday just on the catch-up from where we were in New South Wales. And then I think when the investors really looked into the place and the finances, it even now, it couldn't support a group of investors.
Yeah.
It's a small,
Okay.
it supports us and our kids, but it's not something that they could really grow unless they grew it a lot, and they weren't in that position to do that. So I think when they looked into the finances, they went, yeah, nah, we won't.
Yeah, no.
The lunches sound great. And maybe like the presenting the bottle,
Well,
go, this is my wine.
Yeah.
But that
Sounds great. But the reality of the situation is very different. It's
Yeah.
still farming.
Yes.
But Tony, that was very much an attraction for a lot of
Absolutely.
people outside the wine industry.
I could imagine
That
that.
looked glamorous.
I think it still is.
Lifestyle.
for-
But
Lifestyle.
yeah, it's a lifestyle, and that's you take it because
Yes.
you want a lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lee, am I correct in that you had a look at this vineyard too? Or was that not true?
Drew's dad actually offered it to me.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Offered it
I've
to
heard
lots
this.
of people.
I don't know if I knew
There was a
that.
lot of people that
He
come
said-
up and say, "Oh, I nearly bought your place."
Are
You go,
you
"Yeah, right."
interested? And I said, no.
No.
You were experienced enough to know about the lifestyle.
I knew about the long lunches, but I also knew about cleaning floors at
Yes.
2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And
So we're talking this business. It's a winery, and a vineyard. It's the whole thing. It's not
Yes.
just
No.
someone's
And-
fruit
and-
off and going from there. It's a lot of work.
And a residence.
Yeah.
Like if you were going to, it doesn't really suit an investment group, I don't think.
No.
Unless
For
they
the
wanna
volume as
rent
well, the
house out.
size
Yeah,
of-
it's just
yeah.
not big
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
So, for Drew to leave, he was then general manager at Cassegrain, to come back to this little place where it's just him and me as the apprentice. I was worried that wouldn't be very attractive for very long. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Anyway, so Drew's
I didn't know
dad.
that.
Hey?
I didn't know you were worried about that. I was never worried about that.
Really?
No, I was only worried about whether we could make it work financially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the sale fell through. The investors pulled out. They had paid a deposit. They lost that. And then I remember we rang up on a Sunday and Drew's dad was upset because
How old was Drew's father at this point?
This was 76. He was born in 26, so he was 70.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Not overly old,
No,
but he was
yeah.
looking to back down a
Absolutely.
bit, finding it physically harder.
Was he running on his own? You have a couple of people work
he
helping
did have
you?
yes,
He had one,
Clive and Scott,
Clive, I remember
that's
Clive.
right. Yeah.
from the 80s on.
who probably had held it
Late
together
80s.
for the last
Yeah.
10 years
Yeah, he was
before we
great.
got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
So you had this phone call. It's on a Sunday, and
Yep. And Drew's dad was upset because they had bought taken out a mortgage, bought a block in Coromandel Valley because they were looking
To move
to
off the
move,
farm,
but
yeah.
come back and just run the place. So he was caught with no sale, mortgage, And they were
Rocking a
upset.
hard place.
Yeah.
How you going, Dad? Not so good.
So after that phone call, Drew said, "Oh, I wonder," because we hadn't even really asked them because it was rude how much they were asking for it. So he said, "Oh, maybe I'll ring back and find out how much they wanted for it, just if someone was interested, not us, but just somebody." So he made the phone call again, and at that point, when he asked, "How much is this going to cost, Dad?" Drew's father thought we were asking for us, and we really weren't. We were just curious. And he didn't say, "Oh, no, not us," because it would have broken his heart.
Yeah.
So he got off the phone and said, "Oh, how would you feel about moving back to McLaren Vale?" So we made the decision to come here in one day after a phone call.
But the time was right, Tony.
It was,
By then I was meeting Ray changed a lot for me, and personal circumstances were different, obviously. But also a long time away, as you said, Lee, 15 years, I was starting to think, all the things about the way the little farm and selling it direct and so on. Or I could then start to see, wow, that could be quite a good way to do things.
That's right. But you found someone. I'm assuming you had aspirations to start a family, and like you're going back to this place. You knew it well. You grew up there. You're like, it's a familiar place. You're like,
Suddenly it started.
Pretty good place to
sense.
start something. It's amazing. Like from an outsider looking at it, and when I first heard about the mystique of the Noon, brand and how it's done and all that, and then I obviously so lucky enough to get to know you guys through the restaurant, and then your like children working at the restaurant and stuff like that. It's amazing. It peels it back, and you're like, wow, these guys like do everything, and like it's an amazing story. So it's I could see why that would that time in your life, especially having that time away, like you're saying, maybe you've ticked a few boxes, learned what you need to learn. Seems like a good time to come back and go, oh, we could do this.
Yes, but of course not planned, and I never knew I was ticking box. I just was away until things had changed enough that I started seeing home quite differently. I didn't plan that, but you understand. Like I'd sort of seen what bigger business looks like.
Relate that to myself as well. Like when I was with music, aspiring, and you just want to get out. I wanted to move to Melbourne. I want to play there. I didn't need to go there. I could do the same things I want to do here at that point with the bands. But when I go there, you just want to go the next step. Just want to see what the hell's out there.
Yep.
And then it became a career thing. I was very lucky enough to tour around and see the world and do all this stuff. And I got to a point where I'm like, this is either going to be this forever or. But in my mind, Adelaide had changed.
Yes.
The more I saw the world, was the more I missed or like maybe realised what made Adelaide special. Let alone McLaren Vale in that area, and then you start to understand it, and all of a sudden it's not a bad place. It's not the worst place in the world. Do you know what I mean? When you're a teenager or a young adult, you're like, get me out of here.
Yes.
And then the blessing I had was somebody who was willing to take the punt with me. That made it even more possible and more scary, but also more attractive. As you said, new possibilities opened.
We're assuming that Ray had visited a few times. Had you visited?
Just once.
Yeah, okay.
Once, like one weekend some years ago.
That weekend.
To meet his folks. But then coming back here really wasn't ever on the cards.
Were you married at this point?
No, we married here in McLaren Vale afterwards. Yeah.
That's funny. It reminds me when you say, had you visited the first time her dad saw the place, I think I'm right in saying, was when he brought her down. We had, he drove down with a truckload of stuff, that your possessions and whatnot, and they got here ahead of me. I had committed to stay, work the harvest with the Casa Grains to help the transition to the new people in the 97 harvest, and they came down the late 96 with the truck and whatnot.
The horse,
I came down
we moved everything down.
I wasn't here when he arrived with her, and he looked at our old lines and said,
because they were in the grass.
Sure you know what you're doing?
He said, baby, do you know what you're doing? And I said, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So it was quite a risk from her.
So what was the first vintage you did here was 97?
97, yeah.
What changes did you make from what your dad had been doing?
But there was a label, right? There was Noon was being sold.
Actually, that's one of the big changes. I was going to say we didn't change a lot, but we sort of changed a lot of little things, I suppose. The biggest one, obvious one, was the label. Ray's, creative, and had a look at our old label and said, well, we need to change that.
Well, we needed to make a break, so we needed to turn a business around, and we didn't really know what we were doing, but we knew whatever we was doing wasn't doing very well. So the first thing we did was change the label.
What was that state of? Can you explain what was when you came in? What did you walk into? Because we know there was obviously a label and a
I
vineyard.
cried when I saw it.
Saw the numbers
No,
or
saw the
the
property.
No, physically.
So, all the roof line, I'm good with a paintbrush and making an old place look better than it is. But there was nothing you could do with the roof lines. They were just going in every direction because Drew's dad, I guess, had built on because he only had money to just keep adding on sheds. So everything was in a different and all faced.
Sorry, let's
I,
go around.
I remember that quite clearly.
Do you? Yeah. And
Another lean-to, another
That's
lean-to.
it.
Yeah.
Put that
Basically,
implement there.
yeah.
I've got a new implement, build this
Because
lean-to.
it didn't come in with a few $1 million to
No,
do.
that's-
No,
yeah,
you
that's-
come in and go, well, I need some more room now. I'll just add another shed.
Chicken
this way.
coop on top of a chicken
Yeah.
coop. Yeah.
See, that's basically
There's
what
so
it
many
was.
others.
So we knew we had to turn the business around, and we said to ourselves, we'll give it 5 years, and if we can't turn it then we'll sell it, pay Drew's parents back. If there's any money left, good, and if there's not, then that's fine. We'll just move on and go back to what we were doing.
Financially, what was that? I mean, without prying, but was your father, was there a contract and a sale, like
It
straight
was-
up? Or was it
yes.
like
It was interesting.
Yes.
So it was done as a third party kind of deal at a
Because Drew
price.
has 4 sisters, so he
course.
couldn't
So,
just.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say I'll take over.
I'll take, yeah.
right, yeah.
I'll
I've got this.
have the property, yeah. So we had to work that out. So,
It's
but
not France, you know.
yeah, that's right. He had a recent sale independent value because so we went with that, and then
Was we
the
had to go-
favour we were done by the way it made it possible financially for us was my parents let us pay them back over 10
Yeah,
years.
okay, cool.
They
That's
were the
great.
bank, basically.
That was the land, so
Um,
it was split into 2. But we bought the business, so we had to go to the bank and get a loan to buy the business, and then the land we were able to pay back over a longer time because Drew's parents had to pay back that block. They needed some cash because they
To live
needed to
on, yeah.
find a house and they needed to move.
Because
So
they've got this
we,
place in the McLaren Vale.
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And it's funny, we went to the banks at the time. I had no experience in this really, and just looking for some money to buy the business. And
We got a
anyway, we sort of shopped around. We went to St George because they lent us some money to buy a house in Port Macquarie at one
we
point.
paid
and
for
so
a
on.
business plan to be typed up by a secretary. So we had
Yeah,
our
there
business
was
Yeah.
plan.
no
We
computers,
went to the
yeah.
bank, and the
Yeah, we needed
first
he
bank.
said you need a business plan. All right. And then
We'll make good wine. What do you mean?
yeah, I know. That's what I'm
She's going to do
thinking.
the label.
What
It's
do
all
you mean?
sorted.
And they had a look. Eventually,
First
one
bank
of them
to
just said no. Like we sent the figures and the business plan or whatever, and here's the current trading, and they just said, oh no.
We're not going to
Okay,
loan you
fine.
money.
Well, that was a bit of a shock. We'll try the other one, and it was NAB who said, and we were just lucky that at the time they were in a cycle where they were looking to lend to agricultural small wineries, whatever, generally. Anyway, but he said to us,
He looked at the business plan and he gave it back to Drew the next day and said, "Can you make this look any better?" And Drew says,
What do you- what are you asking me, Vince?
He
Well, I
said,
think like,
What
what,
do
like
you
change the colour of paper or like don't like the font?
he said, "I'm only going to say this once more. Can you make it look better?" So we went and changed the figures
well,
the
all
next
right,
day.
so just give me some better figures. I'm like, well, that's what I think's possible, Vince. But he said, well,
Can you
Yes.
make more?
you may make it better or
Yeah.
not, or I won't give you the money. So
I like that.
But that's when, I think Drew referred to before, when luck's on your side. Red wine was coming. Now the banks would never do that. So there was a lot of things that aligned
it's a good time
for
yeah.
us to
Absolutely.
come back. Mm.
So when did you start on your Master of Wine course?
Master Wine was before I was home, actually.
Sorry, I should say Drew was McLaren Vale's first Master of Wine.
Probably.
Yeah.
I can't think of
Probably.
another one.
So, all of that.
I can't think of
Probably.
another one.
It was
can't
about
think of them.
like 9 in the country, maybe.
Yeah, no, it was a new thing for Australia. The institute in London decided to offer this qualification
Right.
outside of.
Was this what you
London
was?
for the first
Where
time.
did you commence this training? Because we're sort of going
When?
from the changes from the old Noon to the new Noon. Is this something that you entered a journey of, or studying what alongside of?
It was for your self-interest.
Yeah.
So this
yeah.
is very much.
It
after
wasn't
everything was
necessarily
set
about
up.
trying to add to the business. It was
No,
about
no. In
you
fact, I
just being-
started that before we even knew what was going to happen with coming back to McLaren Vale. I was just doing it because it seemed like a really good way to jump in the deep end and learn a lot. And So, I just put my hand up.
For those
I'll have
that
a go.
don't know what a Master of Wine is, can you
Sounds grand,
elaborate?
Well, it's not as grand as it sounds. Everyone's familiar with a chartered accountant, and chartered accountants are members of an institute of chartered accountants who hand out the monarchy, the term chartered makes you a chartered accountant because you remember the institute abide by their code of conduct and rules and standards. Masters of Wine exactly the same. There's an institute of Masters of Wine in London who administer an exam, and if you pass in all its aspects, then you can call yourself a Master of Wine if you pay the fees to join the organisation. So it's just
It's damn hard to become a MW.
Well, it is. I don't want to say it isn't, but I don't want to overstate it either. Like most people, like most things in life, if you want it enough, you need to work hard at knowing about wine and tasting wine, but that's what's good about it. But these days it's a lot more sophisticated the way they do it. So when they first offered it in Australia, I think only Michael Hill-Smith had passed, and he had to go to London.
But he'd gone to London.
And then it made it open to people, and they were sort of in a recruitment drive, like, come on, have a go. Whereas now if you want to qualify as Master of Wine, they sort of take the other approach, like, well, make sure you're up to speed. They don't really want people sitting the exam and failing. They want you by the time you sit the exam to have a pretty good – So there's like a whole
you're ready for
training course to get you ready, whereas when I did it, any mug could jump in and have a go. But
and things have changed because I remember talking to some older Masters of Wine back in the 90s who were saying in the 50s and 60s when they became MWs, they only talked about France or Germany.
Yeah. Well, the world's changed so much.
And now it's everything.
Now they're tasting wines. I was in earlier in the few weeks ago, they have the seminar for students who are training up. And, you taste wine from, the bottom of South America and China and the world. The world's changed and wine's changed. There's wine everywhere now, or much more. Yeah.
What was your thesis?
You didn't have one then?
Oh, I didn't.
No.
Okay.
No, they introduced that. I passed in 99 and there wasn't a thesis then. I'm not going to be able to tell you when they introduced it, but sometime after that, yeah.
Okay.
So can we touch back on the transition? Because I found that really interesting because you're mentioning the first thing you did was just change the label. Yeah. Essentially. And that's where you come in, right?
Yeah. Well, we were changing the wine style as well to bring it fresher, less time in barrel, but those wines didn't come on for a year later.
Yeah, of course.
So the first thing we did was change the labels. So I did many labels, and I'd started that when we were still in New South Wales, knowing we were coming back. So
because I think it's important, like you touched on it, there had to be a finite point that was like signifying visibly that
change.
There was a change, and that does make sense. You look at the bottle and, this is different.
Yeah.
So I had done many labels, and I would take the next one and say to Drew, what do you think about this?
We're talking about hand drawing here? Or?
Yeah, charcoal.
Nice.
The current one was a charcoal drawing. And he would and ah and go, no, I'm not really happy with that. And so this last one, because Cassegrains had just been through a big label change and it cost quite a lot of money. And I said to Drew with this last one, if this isn't it, we're going to have to go and pay someone because
you could say my invoice is getting quite high.
I could have.
I don't think you could pay for another revision.
You need to take out a loan to pay for it.
Okay, so that's the first step. And then
this bottle, one here on the table.
Which is a tawny.
It's a tawny, yeah. But anyway, that's the label that we changed to, and that's the one. I said, this is the last one I'm doing, and that's the one we went with.
Absolutely.
So that's been our label since 1997 is the first.
And you have a different label for your rosé.
Yes, don't start that. If anybody's doing that, that's just something that I started and now people are saying, oh, what's on the next one? So I've just got to keep doing a new painting every year. I should not have started that.
So cool. But it's a good point for us to maybe explain to listeners that maybe don't understand the holistic approach that you guys have to the brand and to the property and to wine maybe as itself. You can explain that further. But obviously you've changed the label and then there's a change between how does that work between you guys in running the vineyard, in running the winery, in running the cellar days? You might want to explain the process of what's a year look like at Loon Winery and who's doing what?
I'm in most of the winemaking side, the apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
so I've been an apprentice.
It's a long apprenticeship.
I know.
Linda.
And there's no prospects for me to rise above that, I don't think. But
So the
I'm
winery
happy
itself
that-
is just 2 people
It's just the two of
mostly,
us, yeah.
yes.
and the kids.
And the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
When
they,
they're around.
but
We
they're
get-
more recent additions.
Yeah. We get help to pick the grapes, and then some family and friends
For
help us
bottling.
bottling and packing. So we have 6 weeks in the warehouse where we pack all of the orders. But the rest of the year, it's just us two.
Except Kevin. We
On
have
the vineyard too.
Kevin,
No, we
yeah,
have 6
our
months of the
lovely
year. I've got
Kevin
a-
who helps us in the vineyard.
a fellow who helps us in the vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
2 days a week.
2 days,
mostly.
2 days a week.
And it's all estate grown, like fruits all from that
No,
parcel?
no. Well, in McLaren Vale, yes, everything we grow that comes from McLaren Vale is on the property. But we've got a long-standing relationship with the Borrett family at Langhorne Creek, which Dad began, which we keep that. So we have some
What
fruit,
fruit's that?
some Shiraz and some Cabernet.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we only grow Grenache at home, although not anymore. Since about 2000, we planted an acre of Shiraz, so it wasn't all that risky of us.
What is how many acres are you working with typically? You know, with fruit coming in.
So I got 10 of old Grenache bush vines and another 4 that Ray and I have planted where the almonds and apricots were across the creek. We've planted that now with Graciano, Shiraz and Mataro more lately.
Wow. So it's a holistic approach. You're saying even the bottling. Is this how are we doing that? Do you have machines in to
Yep.
do that sort of stuff? You have your own line?
We've gone the full. So Mum and Dad used to bottle with a hand corker and a siphon filler, 3 hogsheads in a day with their friends, and then the bins that are in the cellar door that Lee will know. Those bottles used to go up in the bins on display, and then when they was run down, when that stock was run down, they'd
They
get
just
their
bottled
friends
them.
and bottle another 3 hogsheads. Anyway, and we've gone from that, and then when we took over from them, that's something else.
It's called
changed.
just-in-time inventory, though.
Just in time. And Ray and I changed that because I wanted to bottle everything under one label in a batch at the same time, so it was absolutely identical. And in Dad's defence, because had this conversation before, but I'd say, well, the wine you're selling that's had an extra 12 months in oak, they'll be different from the ones. And he'd say, well, it is, but the people would taste what they were buying. You know, that was what you came to Celador, you
that's
tried
right.
that, and that's what you got. It might be slightly different to the one you
It's
bought
just a
with the
different
same,
approach. I've got you.
with the same
Yeah.
label 12 months ago, but you bought what you got. Anyway, but we wanted to bottle at once, so that was way beyond the capacity of the hand corkers and the siphon fillers. So then at the time there was a mobile bottling service around the area, but then that seemed like a good solution
So
for a
they
time.
would pull in on a semi-trailer, and all of the labelling, we were using cork back then. All the equipment was on the back of the truck, so we staffed it, and Drew was at one end and he made sure that the wine got on the truck okay.
Yeah.
It'd go around the conveyor belt and I would be on the end making sure that it looked right when it came off. So we did that for, goodness,
maybe 10 years.
at
It was a
least
while.
10 years whilst this truck was going. But it was harder and harder for the truck because people didn't want to get involved
Demand
in
was
the
dropping.
bottling. So they would then send their wine to vintners
course, yeah.
sort of just, you send
Pack
it
of
and it
facilities.
comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Drew didn't want the wine to leave our property unless it was in a bottle. So we had to decide when the truck was
So the
going
truck
to
said, we're going to
stop.
Is
stop.
that a risk? You know, you don't want it to risk being tainted or damaged in transport or
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's lots
All
of
that.
things that can go
Absolutely,
wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Less
then-
movement, less haulage,
Yeah.
safer it's going to be.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
under our control.
But then
So that really
but
highlights the
then you gotta-
everything behind this wine.
then you
really.
got to warehouse it and everything. Like you got the whole deal then. So, but that's fine. That's how we set up. And so when you'll like this bit. So when the truck said, "Well, sorry, you guys, but other than we got one client on Kangaroo Island, one in the Adelaide Hills, and you, and I'm going to sell the truck." We're like, "Oh, okay. It's time, crunch time. What are we going to do now? Will we send it off site to be bottled, or will we?"
And that
Buy
was
our own
never going to
equipment.
be an option.
And
No.
I didn't want to send it off site, so we better get organised. But I say you like it because we ended up in Italy looking for a because Italy, as you know, but very good at small winemaking equipment. Very good, lots of manufacturers, small family businesses that manufacture particular stuff. Anyway, there was an importer here for this particular one, and so we bought a little filler filler corker, I was going to say, but it's actually a filler capper, and that's a funny story because it was in 2013 when we first decided. So we bought our own line at the same time that we changed from cork to screw cap, which was quite late compared to other people.
I know. Oh, I don't know what to
And,
do.
the poor fella, the father of the family firm in Italy, maybe 30 to 40 employees, they made it all on site. It's really nice.
We went over to visit the factory and saw our machine being built.
Which was
was really
just
cool.
by chance, we were there. And but he said when we visited, and the old man, who was probably in his 70s, wasn't that old, still active in the business, but he was the patriarch by then and the kids were running it. And he said, so I hadn't seen you're from Australia, you make red wine, quality red wine. I said,
Yeah.
with screw cap? Are you crazy? You don't want cork? Well, anyway, that's funny. So we had to decide then because it's not easy you can't have both. No. So anyway, we bought the new line, filler, capper and labeler, and then set that up in the warehouse at home. And we can do it all at home. And,
When you say the warehouse at home,
Yes.
Noon Winery, you got rid of all the add-ons,
We did. We
And
built over the top of it
right?
and either end of it.
Add-ons being the
It was-
annex sheds.
That's it. Yeah.
It's a very interesting story building that winery.
Because you were watching
you
over the
witnessed-
We were
fence.
watching.
we had to ask your approval.
We were watching it. Yeah,
You were neighbours, weren't you?
Yes, and
Yeah.
we got this. I think it was a letter saying we're thinking of building a winery, and this is the design. Do you have any objections? And Jen and I thought, no objections. But then
Well, you could reply to
You
that.
had-
McLaren Vale seems like
you
an
had a-
appropriate place.
you had a very interesting builder.
Yes, we did.
We did.
Rollo Kern, who
Rollo.
people will know and remember. He did a lot of work in the area before coming to work with us.
And
So we were his lackeys.
Right, we were his
for
builder.
2
We basically
years.
built the three of us.
Yeah.
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 He
Who's
lived-
Rollo?
It's retired now, but local fella lived in McLaren Vale, built houses at Victor Hart for a lot of his life, and then sort of semi-retired or later in life started doing work around did a lot for Paxton, but everything from building bridges over creeks.
That's how
to
we met Rollo.
sheds to
We met him because we have a creek that divides our property, and there was an old bridge on there, which would have been they were common in the area. I think they would have been from the railway when they put the railway down. Originally, they probably was like stolen all the stuff because all these bridges around the area look all the same. They're railway sleepers,
Yeah.
and they're railway lines, and that's how they were built.
but it was starting to. It used to.
Sag.
Well, no, but more than that, it would bounce with the tractor when you went over something heavy like a bin of grapes. It would bounce as you went over, and it got to the stage where like. And of course, if you drove too far,
Pause every time you got to do it. Like, should I?
am I going to
It's
make it?
dangerous. Yeah.
And if you put the wheel too far one side, they weren't fixed down, the sleepers. They're just free on the top of it. Yeah, so it was a bit dodgy.
And David Paxton had one of these bridges as well on his property. And we
You still got it.
okay. Well, Rollo had fixed one of his anyway. And we
Our
spent
bridge
the
needed fixing,
summer,
yeah.
you and me, Drew, spent the summer in our creek because our bridge had then fallen down. And we made this formwork and called the cement truck. We thought we knew what we were doing, called the cement truck in. And he just looked at it and said, that's not going to hold. And we spent all
Forget it.
summer building this.
He drove off with his load of cement. We had to pay
I
to have
know.
it dumped.
I know.
Well, because at the time,
It's just going to break through the form.
well, it was going to break the
Yeah.
formwork that I'd put up.
Yeah.
We had no money to spend on designers so we thought, we can do how hard can this be?
Harder than you thought.
Basically copied the old design, but pour a concrete.
It was quite illustrative of like the relationship you guys have and how you run your property, really. I mean, I guess it's like, have a crack, try and do it yourself rather than pay someone else to do it.
We didn't have a choice then. We recycled drip line and stuff because we
Frugal.
just didn't have
new
any
plantings,
money. Yeah.
It's brilliant. And in a day and age of like such that, we'll just get someone in, contract this or put on an account or do that. It's so good. It's refreshing to hear.
And we were blessed, just to finish on the Rollo thing, we were blessed with that, finding him because he was very skilled and looking to work in the sort of way that we like, just smaller job and work with people who were doing it, not in a team. And it suited us to the ground because it kept the costs.
Yeah.
We were
Big project building.
big
I'm
project.
imagining. Yeah.
Big project.
So I haven't seen it, but
For
this
us.
is your warehouse and winery all in one building.
Haven't you been to the
No.
winery?
I've had the luxury of having wine delivered to me in the past.
I have the luxury
But-
of picking wine up and then forgetting
I'll
about
tell
it.
you what,
That's okay.
when the gates are open, and I know you've both extended to me any time, come on, it's very kind of you. But when the gates are open, that I'm going to touch on that 2 weekends or whatever it is a year. I think it's
3.
3 now.
I wanted to get to that because
Well, I
you
am
talked
getting
about
to it.
Well, I just want to know about the most important part of winemaking. I believe anybody can make wine.
Yes,
Some make
of
it
course.
badly. Some make it okay.
Fundamentally,
Just
it's easy.
Other
fermented
people
grape
make
juice.
it brilliantly.
Yeah.
The hardest part is selling it.
Yes.
And I got sick of the number of people that would come to me and say, I'm going to make wine.
Yes.
And then you'd say, what are you going to do
What's
with
your
it once
plan?
you've made it?
What are you going to do with it? Yeah, because
And they have no idea.
it's a very familiar thing to me too, Lee. Because and I can understand it's not silly. You get very focused on wine's a lot of romance and it's exciting, and you get very focused on getting some grapes.
I'll sell it
crushing
to
them,
my
fermenting them.
friends.
Yes.
And you think,
How
well,
much
how
are
many
they
how
going to
many
do?
cases, how many friends have you got? So
But we do
you
have
would,
a.
you
we
would
do
be
have a
the
s-
most successful winery in McLaren Vale
But
in
we
terms
weren't.
of how
in terms
you
of selling
how
what
you
we've
sell your
got,
wine.
but it's very small.
It is small.
Do you know the change you were talking about, what things that you changed? So when we came here, we were open every day except Christmas Day.
Yeah, see, this is what I love, and that's what
We
I'm trying
had
to touch
Drew's
on.
dad put a metal detector from a broken down set of traffic lights, and it's still there and it still works underneath our gate. And we had pages. So
And he had an
because we
aerial on
couldn't
the winery,
afford
so
to
you
be,
could
Whoa!
Be
So if someone
pruning
was just coming
and
through,
someone would come in.
I had
and
to
you'd know.
run.
always open, always. That's it, and that's just a slave, not a slave. Well, you're
That's
you're
what you have
nodding
to
yes,
do.
thank you. You're a slave to the business.
I used to tell the kids
5
to
o'clock.
run down and run over the thing. And
With their push bikes.
Very funny.
Thank
Lee.
you.
So
Very
we're
funny.
assuming that everyone knows, but like you guys, we touched on, are open 3 weekends a year. You're saying 3
Yes.
weekends a year,
Mm.
and the legions of fans or followers or enjoyers of the product, of the wine, of the brand, of the story, come there over those weekends on pre-order, or you can expand it further and take all this wine for the year. Correct? In
Yes.
so many ways.
Yes. So we have a mailing list and then a couple of waiting lists for that. So we send a newsletter out in early October, and each of those members are sort of subject to maximum limits. So it spreads it around as fairly as possible. And then that always leaves a little bit for cellar door. So you don't have to be on the mailing list to get some wine. You can turn up on the 3 weekends that we're open.
And there's an allocation for those people.
Yes. So
yeah,
we
it's
start
usually
with a higher
maximums.
allocation. So the first day, if you want some wine, it's best to come on the first day. But if you want a nice relaxed tasting, don't come on that day. Come on any of the other days. So most of the people who want wine come on that first day. That's why it's quite busy. So we start with an allocation, and as the stock goes down, we keep dropping it. So we might start with 4 bottles of Eclipse, but on the second weekend it's only 2, and on the third weekend it might be 1, because we try to have at least a bottle for somebody. If you came in at 5 o'clock on the last day, that there would be a bottle to
That's
have.
nice.
So we just sort of spread it out.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And, it's so presumptuous to go, oh, well, that's simple. They just open up 3 weekends and see what they got. You have to build that. Like, you've gone from a business that had some sort of maybe I'll come in and grab a few bottles whenever I like, as long as it's not Christmas Day.
Yes.
Maybe more of like I
Yeah.
don't want to assume what it was, but maybe more of a table wine type business or something like
Yeah.
that, to something that's like highly sought after. How do you do that? Like, you can only do that through batting and making good wine and
It is, and being consistent and making the same thing, and then, opening at the same time. If you sort of just do the same thing, people come along with you and they eventually
was it
get
immediately we're just going to open these weekends?
No. So we were open every day, as I said when we came, every day of the year except Christmas. And then as we started to sell out, we closed for 2 days a week. We got married on a Tuesday. Lee was at our wedding because we were closed on a Tuesday and a Wednesday.
It's fantastic.
And
That
we
was 99. That's
was a great
that's when
wedding
we
too.
first started.
Thank you.
Not
Beautiful
to be open.
day.
Yeah.
The bride looked lovely.
Oh.
99. Okay, cool. And you took it over in 96.
6.
Yeah.
Right.
So then, that was 2 days a week, and we chose the 2 days a week that we were not the busiest to shut. And then it started to sell out again, and then we were only open for weekends, and that led to where we are now. So it wasn't an overnight thing. It just happened. And we also didn't grow. So when we came and took over the place, we don't make that much more wine than your dad made.
No.
So everybody else, you sell out and you think, oh, I'll just make some more. And we wanted to keep it that we could still manage, because if we make more, then you got a lot of people coming in, you're worried about someone running over the dog. It just changed what we wanted to be.
Absolutely. You've also built up a small but quite eclectic export business.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you come across your importers in various places?
We were chased down, sort of thing. We weren't looking to do that, but exporters, they were good days in the late 90s, as you know, in the sense that Australian wine was gaining attention internationally. People liked the sort of fuller-bodied McLaren Vale wines were in vogue, red wine. And so people came knocking on the door, saying...
But you kind of carefully allocate to various markets. You're quite specific about what people get.
Yeah.
And you don't let anyone sort of go, well, I need 100 cases of that.
No. So each year we divide the wine up to, if it's a big vintage, everybody gets a bit more. If it isn't, everybody gets a bit less. Mm-hmm. And that includes the export people. So I don't know.
So where are you exporting to at the moment?
16 little countries.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
Because we sometimes wonder why we do it, but we export to about
16?
Yeah, 16 different countries.
But
it's
some
all
countries
all
might
very
only get
small.
30 cases.
Yeah, very small amounts.
Yep.
It's just to kind of spread it around a bit, I guess.
Because you're too nice. Because you're both too nice. They come and say, can we do it? And you're like, okay.
I don't know. And we don't like having too many eggs in any basket, really.
Yeah.
And like lots of customers is
well,
it's harder work,
that's
but
a very good thing.
Safer. You know?
When you
Absolutely.
When you look at what's happened with a number of wineries in this region who were very dependent on China.
Yeah.
And everything was great until it wasn't.
Yes.
And then disaster strikes.
Yes.
And what do?
Oh, yeah. You're stuffed.
A few people have sold out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just love it's the experience of it too, and I might be romantic about it and you guys would be way more in tune to it, but like the whole idea of purchasing and the way that you purchase a bottle of Noon wine or possibly can also can dictate maybe the way you consume it and the way it's treated, So if something's like completely available all the time, you're almost like, oh, it's like water or whatever, where if you limit something or make something, that's obviously been made in a limited supply with a certain approach to it, which is, to do the best we can all the time. It's treated with respect. It's not abused like that. And it's just so refreshing to hear that,
we would
you have to get off the couch and go see someone, It's not like I'm not going to get it online here and then go there and see it. I'll just down the road at any big wine store. Like this is a special event.
You have to make an effort.
Yeah. And you like meeting your customers.
Yeah.
I've been to your open days and
well, I'm in the warehouse most of the time, but Drew's on the bar with his sisters, all turn up on that first day and they just help.
We have customers at Pizza Teco. I was saying this before we came in, like we're setting up these new microphone stands, that I only see once a year. And that's because they come down to buy one of you guys.
I'm glad they come to Pizza Teco.
Yeah, they do.
They tell us. A lot of them say we're going to Pizza Teco.
Like 10 or 12 that book in every year or one of those weekends. I don't know which one it is. And the last time he was there, I was like, it clicked and we had a good conversation at the counter because I was at the counter and it was like, and he sort of turned and goes, I'll see you next year. I was like, I'll see you next year. So this guy literally comes to McLaren Vale. That's it, just for that. And thank you because he comes and eats it.
Well,
enjoys. They've made that a part of their journey, which is fantastic. So,
Thank you for giving them somewhere nice to
Well,
eat.
It's just a reason. Thank you.
It all works together, doesn't it?
More than just, we'll head on a bus and go do whatever, it's an event.
It's an event.
Which is, it's just so rare.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange because we didn't engineer that, as it were. But we're starting to realise that it's a bit of its own thing. It's almost like it's a life beyond us, as it were.
I used to be terrified that people wouldn't show up. It was really sickening.
We always
You've got to arm wrestle your way to the bar.
But it seemed gradual. You said you went from 7 days to what was it, to 5 to 6, 5, and then you must have gone down, we're just going to do these months or until sold out. And then when you're sold out, in 2 months?
Yeah.
And it was like, well, hang on.
I don't know.
How good's that? It's good if it means. I know it doesn't mean you guys are sitting around on the couch watching reruns of Seinfeld.
It's funny because some customers will ask that. What do you do for the rest of the year?
True. Really? They go, how many days a week are you open? I would say on Friday, Monday. Pretty good work week. Well, these olives don't pit themselves.
I just go, yeah.
But it gives you more time to focus and make the wine better, make the product better, to do other things. You know, so like I imagine that's what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So great.
Now, you've got a fair bit of confidence in this region, so much so that you've invested in a couple of
Other little places.
little places.
Yeah. Well, it's home and we wanted to support our local
So
area.
you've got a place in Wollonga
Mhm.
that's open for people who want to have startups or
It started
small
like
businesses.
that. Yep.
And you've got another place on McMurtry Road,
the old
which is
Sparrow
home
House.
to 3
Yes.
small wineries.
Yes.
To good wineries too.
Cellar doors,
Lovely
yeah.
people.
Yes.
A couple
Yes.
of regulars as well.
They are.
The
It's
Bondar and
very
Wine and Ramble
interesting.
as well.
Been there and bought wine
Andy
from all of them.
lucky.
It's
Nice.
great.
Yeah.
Very good.
So when that came up for sale, I don't know how many years ago now, Drew remembered it because his family used to go down there. Like the Sparrows place was a bit of a hub then. They had a swimming pool and nobody else really
Concrete
had
tennis courts.
and a tennis court. So lots of the local kids would go down there, and he knew it from then. And when
The
it,
McMurtry Road Rec Centre.
Basically, yeah.
yeah.
And apparently that's how the family liked it.
Yeah.
Gather
Yes.
people, come to our place
Yes.
for a bit of sport and hang around.
Yeah. So it came up for sale, and we decided to go and Drew just called up the local agent, Mike Cross, and he said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, it's sold." So it was under
Which was
contract.
Was it just the house or the vineyard?
It's a- no, just that little block.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cut the house
About
off. from
nearly
the
an
vineyard,
acre. And he said, "But if you're interested in any other properties," we said, no, we're just interested in that one. And then maybe 3 weeks later, he rang back and said, "Oh, it didn't. The sale didn't go through. It's still available. Do you want to come and have a look at it?" And so we went down that afternoon, and there was a couple of other people milling around, but it was in quite bad shape. A lot of
hadn't
it
lived in
didn't.
for
It didn't
years.
have.
Did
a
your
kitchen.
eyes light up?
No.
Okay.
They didn't, because it needed a lot of work. But the previous owner, he had already done a lot. So it was painted, and he had already
Taking all the
stripped it
plaster
back.
off the
Okay.
They
walls,
had obviously a plan for it that didn't go ahead. So there'd been a lot done to it, but it still needed
a lot.
toilets built, a kitchen built, and things like that. And anyway, we went and had a look at it, and he said, "This is the price. They're not negotiating. If you want, if you're interested, you just put your bid in." And we thought overnight, called my dad and had a chat about it. And so we decided to put a bid in, thinking that, we won't get it, and we weren't going to haggle or raise a bid. That was it. And if it's gone, it's gone. Anyway, no one else put a bid in, so we ended up
was lucky,
with
yeah.
it. Yeah.
And then there was always a plan to. Did you know what you wanted to do with it when you bid it, or
No.
was it an
We didn't.
emotional reason?
You had it for a while, didn't you, before you
Yeah.
decided it would become...
Oh, yeah. Well, we needed to find a builder and put that back bid on. But I felt when we were doing that everybody, because that's a very busy road,
Yeah.
you couldn't do anything awful. You couldn't do any. I wanted to keep the character and just add on.
I was saying, what was the
Basically a
driver
legend.
to buy it? Was it like a childhood thing? It's like, I'd love to make this better, or
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so.
purely a financial investment type thing as well? Obviously,
No, not so much. No, more. I guess we had the concept that there are a lot of wine brands around that don't have a home.
yeah.
So we always
So
thought,
you knew it wanted to do something with it.
yeah,
I thought
that
so,
could be
yeah.
good for
And
some
it would
people.
really, really cool for a place to come back to life and,
It is.
be loved again.
It's a great idea because they all sort of help each other in terms of their visitation as well.
Yes. Yes.
One, you don't just go have one really.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in there a couple of times. You sort of
Yes.
Pop
they're
your head
open.
in
If
the
they're all
other door.
open.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really
And,
good
it,
thing.
and
Especially
it's-
on that street because there's some big heavy hitters on that street
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of big well-known names. So it's nice to have some presence from
small
the
ones. Yeah,
So we were
indie
just-
bands.
the indie bands. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was just lucky timing too.
Yeah.
You know.
And the place in Wollonga is a creative space.
Yeah.
Artists Collective was what the
It started off
it
as.
was the
Do you
idea
work
at
out
the
of there?
beginning.
Do some stuff out of there?
No, we don't have any.
I was thinking more you as an artist. Like,
No,
is that
I'm
the
more
next rose
the
canvas coming
gardener.
from
I'm the gardener. On both places, actually.
there? Yeah, brilliant.
With
Beautiful.
Andy. Mm.
Lovely spot to be.
Mm.
Brilliant.
What about your children? You've got 2, and one is still in Queensland with the army,
With the army, yeah.
Mm.
which is a real surprise to me.
Yes.
And I bet it was a surprise to you
Yes.
too.
Mm,
Yes.
it was
But she's enjoying it, and
I think she'll come
better
back.
and better, yeah, more and more. Initially, a bit challenging, but because she was sort of in the wrong thing for her. But now she's gone to they call combat rescue, so it's more a first on the scene firefighter. She loves what she's studying
Right,
and doing
being-
now. Yeah, yeah,
okay.
active.
Yeah. But I think she was also a little bit like you were when you finished school. She just needed to get out and
She
see
was.
the
She
world.
just wanted to
Get
get away
away.
from home. Yeah,
Yeah.
see what else.
But
And what's your son? What's Harper doing apart from playing football,
so
soccer? Football.
Yeah, same thing.
he's got vintage this year with Molly Duca.
Right.
He's
And-
staying around for the time
Okay.
being. Yeah.
So, and it's good that he's out
I think he
of
needs
the place
to hear
because
Oh,
it'll
yeah.
give
it
him a
from
different
someone
view.
else.
definitely.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
quite different personality in that
Yes.
regard to his sister, who couldn't wait to go. He's saying, "Why would I go? This is comfortable.
This is
And-
great. Yeah. I can come home to mum and dad, get my
One you
meals
got to
cooked.
push and one you got to pull. But that's just different personalities.
But
yeah.
it's
He's-
Indy had heard that Harper's, might apprentice with Drew and doing vintage. So she's said, "Oh, I want to go and do a vintage too." So she's going to do a vintage later this year in Alsace
Great.
with a friend.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I think she'll gravitate back to
Right.
us. I hope.
Fantastic.
With a militant work ethic, which she already had anyway. by
Who
the way.
knows?
And I speak from
She
experience
did.
because she,
Yeah.
You
she
train-
was
you-
an amazing
you do.
employee.
You trained those
She's so
children
great.
really well.
Yeah.
I remember them coming over with a little trolley
Ah, yeah.
with my wine
Wine
allocation.
delivering. Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Gilligan,
No, it's
Mr.
true.
Wine.
It's true. It's just like the manners and just like they come and they say hello and greet and like at such a young age. It's just so impressive. So well done, Ned. Absolutely.
I
Impressed
think
you guys.
that was probably a little bit to the school they went to.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to Wollonga Waldorf School,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really,
You got
I
to
don't
take
know.
some credit though.
yeah,
A lot.
maybe, maybe,
A lot.
yeah.
Intelligent, bright kids. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm.
So what's the future for you guys?
Did we just talk about it? I wonder.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Hope
Well,
so.
Is that something that interests you
a
guys?
year or two ago, we wouldn't have known because they didn't know.
Mm.
But if they continue to show an interest, then for sure, of course, they're welcome. Our challenge will then be how do we, feed 3 families if it turns out that way instead of one off the same, or what to do and so on, how to, because I'm slowly getting older and, would welcome eventually the chance to step back. But how do you do that? And what do they want to do anyway, Tony? I don't know. It's a little bit early to say yet.
Absolutely. And that would, I'm sure time will tell. But,
Mm.
it's just so good to see and hear about, like, especially what's happening in wine now. And they've been so readily available and, like, mass produced and in so many ways. And I know everyone seeing the 4 corners or whatever that was happening, and we all knew about it. But just to hear the story and even just the mailing list or something like that, like just go put a screen away and put away a newsletter that's, coming spam every week for some winery trying to give you a special on like 2-for-1 deal, something. Just go, just stop. I mean, like, this is what we do. We do it well. And if you want it, this is what you do.
Yeah, it's a wonderful. Maybe you can do it with olive oil as well, or something, or a few things. But it's a wonderful aspect of agriculture where you can grow it, develop it, mature it and bottle it in our case, and then sell it all in a sort of because normally if you're a farmer, you're dealing with big and you're a price taker. Like goodness knows what you're talking about, the supermarkets. It's pretty awful. You feel powerless and so on. This is an opportunity where you can
Control.
sort of like be kind of, you can decide how much you want to sell it for and how much you want to make and
But
whatever.
it's still possible in wine because
still possible.
You know, the fruits of your labor or the life and the relationship you guys have, all the effort that you go into it, every step of the way that you approach a bottle of wine affects the outcome, right?
Yep.
And you can only do it that way. Like these guys can't do that. They never will be able to. You know, like there's a human element and approach to it that you can't do on scale. It's just always going to be different.
You can't do on scale, isn't that interesting? And I think funny that it's
even if it's a romantic sense of it,
from
the story
my-
itself won't be right.
No,
you know what I mean? So that's
from
part of wine.
only my perspective, but I like what you said. You can't sort of upscale. I think what most people, again, I'm generalising, but people would love to think all of their wine came from little places like we have sort of thing.
And they would love you to think that too.
The reality.
with their labels.
But what I'm saying is there's a disconnect here, or there's an opportunity, I suppose, too, that it's what the market wants. It's why they love handmade pizza, quality pizza. And you can't upscale, you can only upscale it to a certain point in both cases. Because they're not silly. They really want that you're there, connected, making it.
Mm-hmm.
They're buying into all of that. Yes, it's got to be good. They're not silly, I say again, but I have great respect for consumers. They want good flavour. They won't buy it just because you're there making it if it tastes bad. But, if you can make it taste pretty good, hopefully really good, and it's genuine and you're there and they know that, again, they're not silly, then they'll buy into that, I think, whether it's pizza or wine or whatever, because people are more and more, and I love the way people are so connected with their food. They really want good, healthy food, but food that's made by someone who cares about it. There's opportunity to do that with wine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with everything, all food, I suppose, but especially with wine, there is more than we perhaps capitalise on sometimes.
But there's a price quality thing too that you have to get right. You can sell your product for a lot of money, but you got to deliver a lot too. So I think what was important for us was try to get that price quality thing.
I notice
going.
you haven't increased your prices for a very long time.
Oh yeah, they go up.
They have?
Yeah.
Slowly.
Very
It's been
slowly.
A dollar or two at a time
Very
every now and
slowly,
then.
I would think.
Yeah.
Because costs just do keep,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
man.
happy with that. And if the customers are happy,
And
then that's great. And
I'm
that's,
just always too scared to open a bottle.
please
'Cause I'm
just
like-
drink it, Tony.
Is this the occasion? I'm like, no, it's not. You know what I mean?
But I've done that too with wines over the years, just waiting for the right occasion, and then it just gets too
they're
old.
there to be
Yeah, I
tried.
know, yeah.
They're there to
You
be
got to
tried.
do it.
I have a friend who sent me a photo of 2 bottles of wine, 1971 and a 1976 Grange,
Mhm.
and said, "What should I do with these?" And I said,
Thought about drinking
I
it.
think the 71 probably needs drinking about now, despite the fact it's worth $1,500, $1,600 a bottle. And if you're looking for someone to drink it with, I'll be in Sydney in a couple of weeks.
Is that why you're going?
Yeah.
Is that why we can't do the next podcast?
That'll be a hope in hell that he'll open it when I'm there. And then he sent me a photo of a bottle of 2019 Michael Hermitage and said, "Oh, it wasn't bad, but a bit young." And I said,
From one
"Why
extreme
are you
to the
drinking
other.
that when you should be drinking the Grange?
Yeah.
Take it to if you're not going to drink the Grange, at least take it to a recorking clinic."
Yes.
But I just thought, why? I know old Grange, valuable, but if you've got it, you're not going to sell it.
Yeah.
Why don't you drink it?
Don't
It's-
wait too long.
It's
Yeah.
50 odd years old.
Yeah. I'm sort of torn about it. I want people to definitely to drink it. Don't keep it forever because they don't live forever.
No.
But I really get the
Oh,
specialness of,
so do I.
and not wanting,
So do I.
should I? But yeah, you have to
That
recognise that it's
1971
eventually gets
Grange,
too
you
old.
would have paid probably $10
Not much.
a bottle for it. 11.
Too
And the
light
76
inflation.
wouldn't have been much more. So anyway, I think probably that's about it.
Yeah,
Fair.
amazing.
That's great.
So I'll wind up, and I'd like to thank Ray and Drew Noon again
Thanks
for
for having
giving up
us.
their time,
Thank you.
and best wishes for a highly successful 2024 vintage.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. It's looking
Thanks, Tony.
increasingly good with the sunshine we're in now. If you'd said that a month ago, I would have thought you were being funny, but no it's looking pretty good now.
Well, I look forward to handing over a few more margaritas with olives and some pepper and onion on the side to come out to vintage time. So
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Tales from the Vale. Be sure to like and follow us, TFTV Podcast, on Facebook and Instagram.
To stay up to date with all things Tales from the Vale, be sure to join our mailing list. Just visit our website, talesfromthevale.com, to sign up. You can email us at hello@talesfromthevale.com for any advertising and general inquiries.